Chapter 1. The Golden Child's Shadow. The snow was falling softly outside our suburban Chicago home on Christmas Eve 2023, creating the perfect postcard scene that my mother, Patricia, always insisted on. Every decoration had been meticulously placed, every surface polished to perfection. The smell of her famous honey-glazed ham filled the air, mingling with the scent of pine from our towering Christmas tree. I stood in the kitchen doorway watching her fuss over the table settings for what felt like the 100th time that day. At 25, I'd learned to read the subtle signs of her anxiety, the way she adjusted the same fork 3 times, the slight tremor in her hands when everything wasn't absolutely perfect. "Emma, dear, could you please check on your brother? Make sure he's ready for dinner?" she said without looking up from the centerpiece she was rearranging. My brother Tyler, 2 years younger but somehow always the center of our family's universe, was probably still in his room playing video games. While I'd been helping with dinner preparations since dawn, he'd been granted his usual free pass from any responsibility. "Sure, Mom," I replied, climbing the familiar stairs to the second floor. Tyler's door was closed, and I could hear the sounds of some intense gaming session through the walls. I knocked gently. "Ty, Mom wants you to get ready for dinner." 5 more minutes, came his muffled response. I sighed, knowing those 5 minutes would stretch into 20, but Mom would never call him down herself. She'd send me again and again, until he finally decided he was ready. This had been our family dynamic for as long as I could remember. Walking back downstairs, I found Dad, Robert, polishing his wine glasses in the dining room. He looked up as I entered, his face lighting up with genuine warmth. "There's my responsible daughter," he said with a smile. "Your mother's been running around like a chicken with its head cut off all day. Thank goodness for you, kiddo." Dad had always been the more emotionally available parent, but even he had his blind spots when it came to Tyler. My brother could do no wrong in anyone's eyes. He was charming, spontaneous, and had that effortless charisma that made people gravitate toward him. I was the steady one, the reliable one, the one who cleaned up messes without being asked. "Tyler needs a few more minutes," I told him, settling into my usual role as messenger. Dad chuckled. "That boy and his games. Well, we can wait. It's Christmas Eve, after all." As I helped him set out the wine glasses, I reflected on how different this Christmas felt from the ones in my childhood. There was an undercurrent of tension I couldn't quite place. Something in the way Mom had been avoiding eye contact with me lately, something in the whispered conversations between my parents that stopped whenever I entered the room. "Dad," I began carefully, "is everything okay? Mom seems stressed about more than just dinner." He paused in his polishing, and for a moment I thought he might actually tell me what was going on. Instead, he forced a smile. "Everything's fine, Emma. Your mother just wants this Christmas to be special." But I knew my father's tells, and the way he couldn't quite meet my eyes told me everything was definitely not fine. The doorbell rang, saving us both from the awkward moment. "That'll be your Aunt Sarah and Uncle Mike," Dad said, seeming relieved for the interruption. I went to answer the door, greeting my mother's sister and her husband with hugs and the usual holiday pleasantries. Aunt Sarah had always been the more laid-back sister, the one who laughed easily and never seemed to stress about appearances the way Mom did. "Emma, you look wonderful, honey," she said, squeezing me tight. "How's the job search going?" I'd graduated from Northwestern 6 months ago, with a degree in communications, and had been freelance writing while looking for something more permanent. It wasn't the straight-line success story that Tyler's trajectory promised to be. He was finishing his senior year at Illinois with a business degree and already had job offers lined up. "It's going well," I said diplomatically. "I'm learning a lot from the freelance work." Uncle Mike nodded approvingly. "That's the way to do it. Build experience, make connections. The right opportunity will come along." Mom appeared from the kitchen, her hostess smile firmly in place. "Sarah, Mike, come in, can I get you some wine? Emma, dear, could you take their coats?" As I hung up their coats in the hall closet, I overheard Aunt Sarah whispered, "Mom, you look tired." "Patty, everything okay?" Mom's response was too quiet for me to catch, but the tone was strained. Something was definitely wrong. Tyler finally made his appearance as we were all settling in the living room, looking effortlessly handsome in the sweater Mom had bought him specifically for tonight. He immediately launched into a story about his upcoming graduation and the internship he'd landed at a prestigious marketing firm in downtown Chicago. "The salary they're offering is incredible," he said, clearly enjoying being the center of attention. "I mean, I know I'm starting at entry level, but they hinted at fast-track promotion opportunities." Dad beamed with pride. "That's my boy. Always knew you'd go places." I felt the familiar pang of being overlooked, but I'd long since stopped expecting equal praise for my accomplishments. My freelance work, my good grades, my responsible choices, none of it seemed to shine as brightly as Tyler's natural charm and effortless success. Dinner was Mom's usual masterpiece, but the conversation felt forced. There were too many meaningful glances between my parents. Too many times the conversation died when I tried to contribute. Even Tyler seemed subdued, which was unusual for him. "So," Aunt Sarah said during a lull in conversation, "what's everyone's resolution for the new year?" Tyler immediately launched into his plans for conquering the business world, while Uncle Mike talked about finally getting serious about his golf game. When it was my turn, I mentioned wanting to land a full-time position and maybe save up for my own apartment. Mom and Dad exchanged another one of those looks. About that, Emma, Dad said carefully, we actually need to talk to you about some things. After dinner, my stomach dropped. The tone in his voice, the way Mom suddenly became very interested in her food, the way Tyler looked uncomfortable for the first time all evening, it all pointed to something I wasn't going to like. What kind of things? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. Nothing to worry about right now, Mom said quickly. Let's just enjoy dinner. But the rest of the meal passed in a blur of forced conversation and growing anxiety. Whatever my parents needed to discuss with me, it was big enough to cast a shadow over the entire evening. After Aunt Sarah and Uncle Mike left, promising to see us tomorrow for Christmas lunch, the four of us gathered in the living room. The beautiful tree with its twinkling lights suddenly felt more ominous than festive. Mom and Dad sat together on the couch, while Tyler and I took the chairs across from them. The formal arrangement felt like we were about to have a business meeting rather than a family conversation. Emma, Dad began, his voice serious. We need to discuss your living situation. Here it comes, I thought. They were going to ask me to move out. Okay, I said carefully. Mom cleared her throat. We've been doing some financial planning, and we've decided that it's time for you to start contributing more to the household expenses. I blinked, confused. I thought I was already contributing. I pay for my own car insurance, my phone bill, my student loans. Yes, but you're still living here rent-free, Dad interjected. You're 25 years old, Emma. Most people your age are fully independent. The words stung, but there was something else in his tone, something that sounded almost rehearsed. Tyler shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Maybe I should go. No. Stay, Mom said firmly. This affects the whole family. She reached into the side table drawer and pulled out a manila folder. My heart started pounding as she opened it and pulled out what looked like a formal document. We've calculated your share of household expenses for the past year, she said, sliding a paper across the coffee table to me. I picked it up with trembling hands, my eyes scanning the itemized list. Room and board, $8,400, $700 month. Utilities, electric, gas, water, internet, $1,800, $150 month. Food, $3,600, $300 month total, $13,800 at the bottom. In my mother's precise handwriting was a note. Payment plan available. Discuss terms. I stared at the paper, reading it twice before the full impact hit me. They wanted me to pay them almost $14,000 for the privilege of living in my childhood bedroom for the past year. I don't understand, I said quietly. You never mentioned any of this before. Dad leaned forward, his expression stern in a way I rarely saw directed at me. Emma, you're an adult. It's time you started acting like one. We've been subsidizing your lifestyle for too long. Subsidizing my lifestyle? The words came out sharper than I intended. I help with groceries. I do housework. I help Mom with errands. That's what people do when they live somewhere, Mom said coolly. It doesn't replace paying your fair share. I looked at Tyler, hoping for some support, some indication that this was as crazy as it seemed to me. Instead, he was staring at his hands, his face flushed. What about Tyler? I asked. Is he getting a bill too? The silence that followed was deafening. Tyler is still in school, Dad said finally. His situation is different. He's 23 years old, I said, my voice rising. He'll be graduating in 6 months. And he's been living here just as long as I have. Emma, Mom's voice had that warning tone I remembered from childhood. This isn't about Tyler. This is about you taking responsibility for your choices. I looked at the paper again, the numbers swimming before my eyes. $13,800. Money I didn't have, had never been asked to save, had never been told I would need. Where am I supposed to get this kind of money? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Mom and Dad exchanged another look, and I saw something pass between them that made my blood run cold. We've spent enough on you, Emma, Mom said quietly. It's time you figured it out on your own. The words hit me like a physical blow. 25 years of being the good daughter, the responsible one, the one who never caused trouble. And this was what it came down to, a bill and a dismissal. I stood up on shaky legs, the paper crumpling slightly in my grip. I need some air. Emma, wait, Tyler started to say, but I was already heading for the front door. Outside, the snow was still falling, but the perfect Christmas Eve scene now felt like a mockery. I sat on the front steps, not caring that the cold was seeping through my clothes, and stared at the piece of paper that had just changed everything. My phone buzzed with a text from my college friend, Jessica. Merry Christmas Eve. Hope you're having an amazing night with the fam. I almost laughed at the irony. Amazing night indeed. As I sat there in the snow, I realized that this wasn't just about money. This was about something much deeper, something that had been building for years, but I'd been too naive to see. This was about where I stood in my family, about my worth in their eyes, about the fact that I'd somehow become expendable. The front door opened behind me, and I heard Tyler's footsteps on the porch. His voice was soft, uncertain. I didn't turn around. Did you know about this? There was a long pause. They mentioned they were thinking about asking you to contribute more, but I didn't know about ... That, he gestured at the paper in my hands. Contribute more, I repeated flatly. Not contribute more, Tyler. Pay them back for letting me exist in their house. He sat down beside me on the cold steps. It's messed up, is it? I turned to look at him because they seem to think it's perfectly reasonable, and they're not asking you for anything. Tyler's face reddened. I'm still in school, ... for 6 more months, and then what? Are you going to pay them back for the past 4 years? Are you going to get a bill for Christmas morning? He didn't answer, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. No, Tyler wouldn't be getting a bill. Tyler would never get a bill. I should go back inside, I said, standing up apparently. I have some figuring out to do. But as I reached for the door handle, I heard Tyler say quietly, Mom and Dad have been fighting a lot lately, about money. Dad's business isn't doing as well as he lets on. I turned back to him. What do you mean? I overheard them last week. Something about the mortgage? About cutting expenses? He looked up at me with guilt written all over his face. I think that's what this is really about. The pieces started falling into place. The stress, the whispered conversations, the sudden demand for money from the child. They'd never asked for anything before. This wasn't about teaching me responsibility. This was about financial desperation, and I was the easiest target. Why me? I asked. Why not you two? Tyler's answer was barely above a whisper. Because they think you'll actually pay it, and there it was. The truth that hurt more than the bill itself. They knew Tyler would refuse, would charm his way out of it, would probably make them feel guilty for even asking. But me, reliable, responsible Emma, would find a way to make it work. I'd sacrifice my own dreams, my own future, to meet their expectations. Not this time. I walked back into the house with a new resolve building in my chest. My parents were still in the living room, talking in low voices that stopped when I appeared. Did you think about what we discussed? Mom asked hopefully. I looked at both of them, these people who had raised me, who had shaped my understanding of love and family and worth. Then I looked at the Christmas tree with all its perfect decorations, the symbol of the image they worked so hard to maintain. Yes, I said calmly. I thought about it. I walked over to the tree and carefully removed an ornamental little ceramic angel that had been my favorite as a child. Mom had always made a big deal about letting me hang it every year, telling me it was my special ornament. I'll be moving out as soon as I can find a place, I said, tucking the angel into my pocket. And I won't be paying this bill. Dad's face darkened. Emma, you can't just watch me, I interrupted, surprised by the strength in my own voice. You want me to act like an adult? Fine. Adults don't pay retroactive rent to their parents without